Zoho is more well known for its business application software tools like CRM, user engagement, finance, and stuff. And most people don't realize that we really have a hidden gem here that we've been using for a good long time. This is why we actually decided to even do this launch, to let people know what we have. We've been working on this alone for over 15 years. So that's the workplace. It's relevant at this time and age, and we wanted to sort of relaunch this. Now, before we go into the product itself, what we'd like to do is share the kind of vision that drives us, and hopefully that vision will allow listeners to see why we are differentiated, why we're going in the direction we are, and most importantly, where can they see us expect to go? What are our prime movers? What are the anchors upon which we build our strategy? So that's what I want to share in the first part of the deck, and then Aaarti will spend more time on the product itself. So the first thing I'd like to bring out here is a quick nutshell of Zoho. For people who don't know Zoho, we are a company that's been around for almost a quarter of a century. Notably, we are private, large, private, never taken a dollar of external capital, and we have about 50 million users worldwide. We're a profitable company. We've elected to remain private so we can control our own destiny. We're focused on building a very broad set of business applications. That's the number 45, and we're across a good number of countries across the world. Back to Zoho Workplace. This is basically our productivity and collaboration suite. And the fundamental thing we see with most of such suites is they haven't adapted very well to the nature of work itself. And that's largely an artifact of their history. Many of these products were created 30, 35 years ago, and capabilities and layered on top of them. So they've, in some sense, not been architected or adapted to see how dramatically nature of work itself has changed in modern times relative to what it was 30 or 35 years ago. So that's the set of trends that we're going to look at. All of this, many of you listeners might already know, but it would help you understand what drives the way we look at things. The first big trend we see is the notion of work being dynamic and agile. The idea here is that work is often today unorchestrated. It's not centrally planned. Teams are distributed. Problems come up that need to be solved ahead of time and have to get moved ahead of the queue. So you can't just plan everything. Teams need to be quick. They need to span across different groups in the company. They have to react very fast. So when this means businesses need to change, people need to change, and the tools need to adapt. So that's the first big part. The second trend is, of course, as we've seen over the course of the pandemic, over the last 8 months or so, work is very definitely remote. We are a company of 10,000 people who are entirely remote. And work in future will likely continue that way. And a lot part of it might also move back to being local. So we are likely to see models that are different, possibly hybrid models. And once again, that changes behavior, and it requires the tools that can adapt and create the kind of equivalence no matter where you work. So you can work equally productively and equally integrated into whichever team you belong with, no matter where you work and how you work, or even what time you work. Third big trend is the notion of work crossing boundaries. We've seen over the last 20 years, as globalization has moved across industries, that this is something that geography has been one big boundary that work has moved across. The one we are talking about here, more specific, is work crossing organizational boundaries. Organizations are usually set up and organized around functions like sales or marketing or support or finance and so on. Very often today, problems don't come up and are self-packaged as a finance problem or a sales problem. They are composite problems. So something comes up. I've dealt recently with an issue with a customer on privacy. So that involves a security team, that involves our legal team, it involves an account manager, and it involves me, an executive, trying to get a handle on that issue. So to address that issue for the benefit of the customer, we have to assemble these teams who don't necessarily work together day to day, who from an organizational structure might report somewhere at a senior executive level. But here you need people who are in operational roles to quickly assemble together, solve that problem, because this is an issue around privacy and it needs to be addressed not in 24 hours, in a few hours. So how can your tools allow you to do that? What is the technology that allows different teams to work together while maintaining permissions and access control and the sanctity around all of that? That's the third trend. This one is about mobility. We all know that this is the work has moved to a mobile world, but this is more than just a device. It's about how teams are orchestrated today. You have a lot of organizations with back office teams or office-driven teams, and then you have teams that are field teams. So think of service organizations, think of retail organizations. So these people on the front, they use technology, but they don't use it the same way. Not only do they demand that it's served on a different device, they don't want deeply complicated, sophisticated applications. They have to solve a specific problem at the customer front. Maybe it's an invoicing issue and they want only that detail served up to them. They don't want to see this sophisticated, integrated, complex product that somebody in the office in the finance department is actually looking at. So that calls again for technology to adapt and present just the capabilities that are needed to people on the front end. Last trend I'd like to point out is this is something that actually encompasses all the other four. Work revolves around the customer. Increasingly, as we've heard the mantra of customer centricity, every company works around the customer. And what this really means is the customer is integrated into work in ways that they weren't before. That means across more teams, not just a sales team or an account management team. That means earlier in the process, even before a potential sale is made, the customer might be engaged in a process where the requirements are being understood. Companies often choose to have customer advisory boards so they can bring them in early, even in the design phase. In fact, one of the case studies that Aaarti is going to talk about will actually discuss how you can use some of these tools to set up a customer advisory board. So how is Zoho adapted to all this? And what are we doing and what drives our purpose and in building out our software? So I'm going to point to these 4 C's, if you will, and I'm going to start at the top left. The first thing here is context. We live in a world of information overload. You have so many different apps vying for your attention. You have so many different notifications. What you need to solve a problem is just the context of that problem at that moment. So you're dealing with an invoicing issue. You want to know the invoicing information of that particular customer. You don't want to get dropped into an invoicing app where you have to navigate your way through. You are in a customer interface and you want the invoicing information to come to you. So the big thing about context is providing information that's needed and bringing it to you as the user so you can solve that problem and spend less time searching around in the technology. Top right, continuity. So continuity is probably the best example of that is what Apple has done across devices. You can start an operation on your phone and you can continue this on your laptop or perhaps even on your watch. And that's continuity across applications. What we're discussing here is to bring that kind of thinking and capability at the app layer. So you're working on, again, going back to the issue of an invoicing problem. You might be dealing with this on one device and you can pick it up on another device. There's also continuity across time. A lot of problems can't get resolved right away. They need more information or they need more participation. So someone has to preserve that status so that when you come back up, you don't reinvent the problem and that status is stored in the application or in the context of where you're solving that problem. That is continuity. So that is continuity in this case across time, across apps, and across devices. Bottom left, convenience. Convenience is it's a term bandied about a lot, but if we think a little bit more deeply, it is actually the core reason why any automation is happening. Everything we talk about in the areas of AI, in the areas of workflow, it's about convenience. Convenience means I can do more stuff in less time. Isn't that the fundamental role of software anyway? So the idea is if I can do something to take it down to brass tacks, if I can do something with 1 click, I wouldn't want to do this with 5. So how do you design applications where information is presented to you? You don't have to go searching around for different things. And repetitive tasks that you have, or the system automatically observes that, helps you automate that, or even prompts you to automate that. Your AI brings you the information that you need, so you don't go around looking for it. That is convenience. So look for that also in the application as we go through the rest of the demo. Bottom right, this is, of course, the world of today. The world today is much more around teams, in fact, cross-functional teams, and not around the individual. But if you look at software applications, many of the earlier stage ones, think of the Office application suite as an example. They were built around the individual, and they've been layered on with veneers built on top of them to accommodate teams. So what this needs now is a rethinking of how some of these tools are even articulated. So, for example, in our Work Drive, which is our cloud storage platform, there is a notion of teams. So by default, the entity that you work with is a team. So sharing of documents is actually implicit rather than making you have to do it. So these are the 4 principles around which we built our products. We'll show you some of these in the features and capability in the demo we do today. And this is what drives the direction in which we're going to take this suite.
So what we'll do now is I'll just quickly introduce the individual products to you, and then we will just jump into the demo. So that way you get a sense of how it all falls together in a demo. So Zoho Workplace is a single, well-integrated suite of 9 apps that is built for creation, collaboration, and communication. And this is done by bringing in business context and continuity across these apps. So I'm split this into 3. So the first one is content creation. Like Vijay said, most people don't realize that we actually have a full-fledged Office suite on the cloud. And there are only 3 or 4 such games in town, and we are one of them. We've been around for over 15 years, and we've been using these apps ever since. In fact, this entire presentation that you see, it runs on Zoho itself. The Office suite now, we've tried to include things like unified search, things like AI, and it's constantly evolving to suit the needs of a modern workplace. The next bunch of tools are collaboration tools. Every tool today is built around collaboration. And this means collaboration on content and documents with our centralized file management tool, Work Drive. And Work Drive is completely built around Teams. And in fact, we released Work Drive only late last year. And the next type of collaboration is collaboration around voice and audio and video. And that's where we have web conferencing, our web conferencing tool, Zoho Meeting. And here we also have something interesting, something that's very relevant for today. And that is Showtime, which is our distance education and training tool. So with Showtime, you can broadcast and share knowledge with larger interactive teams, be it within your organization, to third parties, and so on. And finally, we have a communication tools. So communication is both formal and informal. So for all formal communication, we have email. For informal and other kind of business messaging, we have Zoho Click. And we also have Connect, which is like a social intranet for companies. Let's say like your Facebook for businesses. Let me just show you how Workplace can be used in different verticals as well. So here I'm going to pick the construction industry. Many construction projects, they work this way. And at each stage, different people are involved. So it often starts with preparation and client briefing. And here the co-stakeholders are involved. Then they move on to concept and design. And this is usually led by architects and engineers. And then the third stage, of course, is pre-construction. They're going to have contractors, subcontractors, project managers, the finance department, and all of these people are brought in. And when it comes to construction, they bring in the field engineers, third-party vendors, health and safety managers, and so on. And then, of course, finally, there is the handover and commissioning stage where the client and the stakeholders are brought in once again. So I'm going to show you how Workplace helps with communication and coordination across these different parties. So the first thing to do is to sell the vision to the client and pitch the initial project idea. So remember, we have a full-fledged Office suite here, and I'm going to pull up our presentation editor. So you and your design team, you can collaborate together, work together, and create a captivating presentation. I want to just pull your attention to the bottom left corner. So here you can see this chat icon here. So you can start a conversation around this presentation. You can simply copy the link and paste it in this business messaging tool here. And you can bring the groups on board and start a discussion and continue conversation here. Now, this group will comprise of the same members that you have in your work drive, which is our centralized repository, across Connect, the intranet, and basically across all the workplace apps. So this is what continuity is about. You start your work in one place, and then you contextually continue working across the board. And at no place is your work interrupted. And while creating the slides, you need not start from scratch. You know, you can repurpose the presentation from the company-wide slide library. And once you have your idea in place, you might want to have a confidential or a private meeting to discuss the vision with the co-stakeholders. So when it comes to web conferencing, let me show you one important capability. So you can set enterprise level video settings. You can lock a meeting. You can set entry exit notifications. You can moderate the session, manage Q&A. You can basically do everything. You can control the entire meeting, and you can ensure that your private meetings remain private. So for all asynchronous communication, you can create groups. And you can share information on them periodically and educate everyone involved. Now, this also acts as a knowledge base for anyone new who joins your organization to get accustomed to the way things function in your company. So this is an example here. So let's say Sophia is a project coordinator. She creates a group for phase 1 of the project. The design team can then share initial project designs. They can get comments. They can get feedback. Then you have the field engineers. They can add pictures and videos of the site developments and other updates. This is basically a space for everyone to discuss ideas, to get new joinees up to speed, and to ensure that everyone is on the same page. So now you have your vision finalized. So the next step is to project budgeting and to do some activity planning. And here I want to pull up our other element of the Office suite, which is our spreadsheet tool. And so, as I said, our spreadsheet tool, it supports more than 350 predefined functions. You can perform from the most simplest to the most complex of calculations. So here, Felix from the finance team, let's say Felix from the finance team, collaborates with fellow staff members to produce a forecast of project cost and, let's say, duration. Now, Sheet is also powered by Zia. So at the bottom right corner, you can see this green icon here. So all Felix needs to do is simply click on it, and Zia will recommend charts automatically based on the questions asked. And from the charts, Felix can decide which ones to add in his reports. Another important part of the pre-construction stage is managing multiple work items and coordinating work across departments and across regions. So you can manage work with your, manage tasks, manage day-to-day tasks, subtasks, assign due dates, and everything from within your inbox itself with the tasks module that's within inbox itself. You can also always use Zoho projects, which is our project management tool, if you want something more complex. So the choice here is left entirely up to the customer. Irrespective of which one you use, all the notifications and everything within projects, within the tasks will always reflect in your inbox. We also have a group calendar. So you're going to have multiple teams working. You're going to have one calendar for the design team. You're going to have one for the field team, one for back office. So you can see all of these calendars in the group calendar, and you can assign work accordingly or call for meetings. As you can see on the right pane here, you can schedule meetings from here itself. You do not have to go out to a meeting tool again. Now, this is important because construction companies, they usually work around the clock and they work in shifts. So this means you need to understand who's working when. So you can get your workers to check directly into work and update their status when they're unavailable for collaboration. Like I said, this is usually part of project management, but in this case, it's part of a communication tool. You can also view who's on site, who's away, and who's currently in a meeting. Now, this is important because the construction industry constantly involves the monitoring and back and forth between head office and the construction site and the sales offices. Now, by definition, this is work happening remotely. And that's why mobile apps are indispensable. So let me give you a couple of examples of how. So let's talk about communication first. So here, Rick, let's say he's a field engineer. He's constantly in touch with Sophia, who's back at head office. He shares site progress through instant chat, through audio, through video. And the best part is, apart from just messaging, you can also bring in multimedia and send images and videos of the various site developments. Another example is documents. You can access all the files on the go. For example, the guys on the field, the guys at site, they need to have access to the latest versions of the floor plans, of the designs, and all the other project information. And these will have to be available to them as and when it's updated by the design team back at head office. All of this can be done through the smartphones, and this ensures that everyone involved is up to date and that no piece of communication ever gets lost. Now, the internet connection on a construction site can be very unstable. Documents can be accessed in the offline mode, even when there is no internet connectivity. And you can also save your most recent documents here, and you can create new ones. And all of this will be made available to you in the offline mode. So let's just quickly go back to the scenario. So once you have the construction, let's say the construction is completed, the final stage involves handing over all the documentation and the files to the clients. So all the files, all the documents, they can be added securely by creating external share links. You can add attributes to each of these links. You can set a password. You can set independent permissions. You can restrict downloads. This is basically for you to have an idea of who views your documents, and you can share this in a very secure and private way. So this brings us to the end of the session. This is just an example of how you can use Workplace in a completely different vertical. So to summarize, Workplace can be used across multiple verticals, across various departments, and across organizations of any size.